was a mill in Clachintuna. We're going to go back a long way to Doomsday, the Doomsday Book, 1086. But before I start, I've got to thank our chairman for his equipment. Knowing I was going to retire from the committee, my projector decided to fail, and that went. So I'm very grateful to Norman. And can I also take the opportunity, as I've retired, there's nothing wrong at all, to all my interest in everything, as I'm getting older, to come down to committee meetings from my home in Suffolk, it's a 50-mile round trip. And really, I've offered my knowledge, whatever I've got, to the society for any questions. So, I wish the society well. It's a difficult year ahead. All of this with the museum wasn't of our making at all, being imposed on us, but I think it could be an opportunity, like a phoenix rising again in a different direction. Anyway, where's the mill in Clachintuna? Clachintuna is Clacton. And knowing the Doomsday Book, so I went up to London recently. I went to the National Archive. I said, I'm going to do a talk at Clacton. Can I borrow the Doomsday Book? So I had to bring my own, look. It's not quite so long. This is 1864 Essex transcription of the Doomsday Book. Right. And there it is. This is the entry for the bishop. Remember, from the 7th century, the bishops of London, the old St. Paul's, owned the land hereabouts. And we can see the 110 litre. I want to bring your attention to, if I can find it, now 1 mil. And before that it says always 1 fishery. Now those words always and now are important in understanding the Doomsday Book, because always means that fishery here, where was it, I don't know, it was here in the time of King Edward. They put T-R-E, the reign of Edward. But now means this mill, wherever it was, came after the Norman invasion. So it's a useful reference. We're not going to go through everything because we're just interested in this mill. Where was it? I've got no answer for you, but I'm going to raise some issues, be for you to decide. And you can say, dismiss all that. You might say possible, or you might say likely. You will have to decide. So, 1086, when the Doomsday survey was taken, there is no great and little Clacton, just Clachintuna. So it's a big area. But interestingly, the neighbours next door were divided. Great Holland and Little Holland. Little Holland, of course, is Holland on Sea of today. But Clacton were a bit behind. We don't know when it was divided, but sometime after the Doomsday survey of 1086. So, mills. Water mills, tide mills, they're types. They can occur on a river, an estuary, or a spring. That one might surprise you, and I'll have the evidence a bit later on. One we don't often think about, a spring. And windmills, then, we got a post mill, that's the original mill, and a smock mill, and a tower mill, and we look at those as well. So it could be any of these. And let's go, I'm sure some of you remember the tide mill at St. Joseph, on St. Joseph Creek. The creek is on the right-hand side, and on the left-hand side was the mill pool. So when the tide came in, the sluice gates opened, filled up the mill pool, closed the sluice gates, and as the tide ebbed out, then milling could start by opening the sluice and water turning toward the millstones. We go up that hill there and turn right, we come to Point Clear. You can see the narrow little passageway in front of the mill itself. And here's the view from the other direction. And you can, some of you might remember, you used to have water sports on that. Perhaps they still do, I don't know. Water sports on the mill pool. It's a vast area of water. And there's another view, and we're on the creek now, Snow's the creek, and the barges have been the grain in, ready for milling. And there's obviously more than one barge there. That's how I remember it, and possibly some of you remember it also. It's just the wrong time for any conservation heritage at all, and eventually it had to come down. But a great loss really for Snow's. On the other side, to Walton on Naze, another watermill. This one went a long time ago. On the right-hand side is the mill pool, and on the left-hand side going out to the Walton backwaters. And can you just see the mast of a barge there, just arrived bringing in grain to be milled. And on this plan of Walton's Naze, I think in the middle the mill pool, you can see what a vast sheet of water is. And there is the mill itself, and there's the channel there, going out into the backwaters as they start milling. And later on, the mill pool was used for holiday boating activities. And because it's still there today, quite silted up of course. Little Holland is where I was born and grew up, Holland-on-Sea. The Hall, Little Holland Hall. And you can see there a large pond. Actually it's in two. I've got another picture, but the quality isn't very good. Let's have a look. Can you see that? Can you see outlined in blue? There's two distinct pools. The lower one is what we call the upper pool, and that was fed by a spring. Then there's an embankment there, dividing, and it goes into the lower pool, and eventually at the top there, what they call the issues, it floods down onto the Holland marshes and escapes. We've just seen two very large mills. The earlier mills were nowhere near that size at all. I'll come back to that one a bit later on. So there, water and tide mills, the windmill types we've already explained. And we'll go back to Walton, because by the tide mill, there was a windmill as well, very close together. And this is the earliest type of mill, a post mill, a central post, and that whole top rotated to be most efficient to catch the wind. And you might just see there, oh sorry, can you see that angled bar there? Men would go out and push on there to push the mill round to face the wind. Another mill, we're at Wheelie now. The same side of mill, a post mill, but can you see on the left-hand side, we've got a fan tail now. So this automatically turns the mill round to face the wind. And it has a circular track around, which rotates the mill as the wind blows. And on the right, it was superseded by a steam mill, steam powered, as a wheelie. Great Clachintuna had a mill. Ah, is this the one? Is this our doomsday mill? No, I'm afraid not. But Great Clachintuna, and you'll know Windmill Park, won't you? Yes, yes. There's the mill. And again, the remains of a fan tail to this one, so that's what up to date at the time. Can you see that building on the right hand side? Low building? Any idea what that might be? A little clue, we're looking towards the sea. Yes, well done. I believe that's what was the Middlesex convalescent home. I think it's the only thing I can think of that size. Oh, it's this is Sussex. I put this one on, it's a photograph I happen to have, and so many of our mills just blew down in gales. It's very susceptible, and here's something example. Look for young lads climbing all over it. Right, so we're back to Walton now. So we've got two different types of mill, a water mill, or tide mill rather, and a windmill side by side. Every community is a big business milling to get grain and into flour, etc. My grandfather used to tell me a story about in Sussex there used to be two windmills side by side. They had to close one down, he said, there wasn't enough wind for two wheels. I believed him. A smock mill now. This is angled sides. This is Grey Holland. It's not there anymore, but some of those buildings that are on the left are still there. It's on the little Clachintuna Road, formerly the Common Road. And here you can see a fantail right at the top. So this mill, the top section rotates to be most efficient to the wind power. A smock mill. And lastly, incomplete, but a tower mill was brick, tapered sides, again with a similar structure on the top. Right. So mills are recorded in the Domesday Survey, 1086. Invariably though, they are water mills or tide mills. It's very rare for a post mill. They came in a little bit later. So we're narrowing down now our field of our mill in Clachintuna. 18th century map, and perhaps you can see one of the mills that we've just been talking about, Grey Holland. Yes? The Common Road, Grey Holland Village. But that's not what I'm interested in. I want to come down to Holland Harbour, Little Holland, and I want to point out that little symbol there. That symbol means a mill, water or tide mill. And that's very significant. On this 18th century map, it marks a mill. Because we're going back to that earlier map I had, in the Royal Commission for Historic Monuments, 1921, under Little Holland, it says, the mill ponds at Little Holland Hall, north of the site of the church, 2 ponds and a large basin embanked on the north end, and they remain fairly good condition. So that identifies the 2 different ponds. So the upper pond, near the present roundabout, was fed by a spring, and then there was a mill between on the embankment. And remember what I said, we're not talking about huge mills you've seen at St. Joseph or Walton days, much, much smaller. This was debunked, I read a year or 2 ago. Didn't say, but I think the evidence is there with that map, with that symbol on, and the Royal Commission clearly identified this. The only thing I'd say against it, the Lord of the Manor, would he want an industrial concern right outside his house, however small? But I firmly believe this was the site of a mill. And Harvey Benham, in his book about Essex water mills, says this is the one at Great Clacton, or Clachintuna I should say. But I can't see that because this is Little Holland, totally different ownership of lands. So I discount that one. So, where was the mill recorded in Domesday then? Where was it? I've got 3 suggestions for you. I'm going to leave you to decide. Little Holland Hall. There you are, I've just said. But this Little Holland isn't Clachintuna. It's a different place, totally different settlement. Today, it's all merged in with Clacton, Holland on Sea, but it's so separate. So I discount this one. But if you look at the top there, in light blue and red line, there's like a rectangular inlet there. Now remember the Gunfleet Estuary, where the Holland Haven Country Park is today, and where the Frinton Golf Links are, that was once a great medieval estuary, a trading estuary. And trading vessels went up Holland Brook. Holland Brook, it used to be called Holland River because several documents record it as a river. And the Tendon Level Commissioners, in their minutes books, they call it the Great River. Pick a stitch. Pick a stitch. Again, once as navigable for small vessels, really barges, perhaps small barges, and larger vessels would be moored in the estuary and they'd transfer the goods from the local produce going down to the London markets. So all these waterways were in use and active. So that little light blue rectangle, was that a mill there? Again, a tide mill where the tide came in. But again, we're at Little Holland, not Clachintuna. And I suspect that actually was a little a landing place, a lading place. And one of those is recorded in the late 1600s in the grounds of Little Holland Hall. They particularly refer to it. And I've written that's the location. And very near to that, some years ago after the war, a Roman urn was found with coins in. And it's believed that in a storm, a Roman vessel, galley perhaps, came into the estuary to seek shelter, and it's a bit rough, so they dug a hole and buried their gold coins and never recovered them. It might have been that very spot. All speculation, I know. Anyway, the next one. So we discounted the Holland. Next one, Clacton Wash Lane, obviously. And this map really refers to Napoleonic times when the Board of Ordnance was selecting sites for Martello Towers, batteries, etc. Coming down from the top at an angle is Wash Lane, which you all know today. And then at the bottom here, remember here, is the Greensward Cafe, Toby Carberry. Yes. And just a little bit further, it says Clacton Gap. You can see a little gap there, but Reed Land Pool, that's a significant name. And the word wash, Clacton Wash. We get used to saying these words, Wash Lane. What does it mean? Did it mean that at high tide, the water washed in and filled the Reed Land Pool? You know by the Greensward Cafe, you're right down at sea level there, aren't you? Yes. So was there, at the edges where it says Clacton Gap, was there a dam, an embankment, and a small mill? So as the tide came in, it filled up the Reed Land Pool, sluice was closed, tide went out, they could start milling. That's a possibility, I think. But it's right on the coast. We get gales and storms, don't we? A mill could get damaged there at that location. And again, remember, I'm looking at and thinking about a small mill, nothing like we saw at St. Joseph or Walton on the Naze. But that is a contender. I'm repeating what I've just said to you, Reed Land Pool, and the dam was made with a sluice. So, that's one to think about. Oh, and lastly, this is my suggestion for the location of the Clachintuna 1086 recorded mill. It's on Holland River, just south of the Bishop's Clacton Park. Now, remember I was saying, the Bishops of London owned all the land. Clachintuna hadn't been divided between Great and Little Clacton then. The bishops had a stately house at Great Clacton, possibly where Great Clacton Hall is today, just north of the church. Also, they had a chapel there within the grounds of St. John's Church and other manorial buildings. So the bishops and their entourage would visit. The bishops were very wealthy indeed, very wealthy. And they had two parks. So when they arrived, they had leisure and hunting parks. One of the parks you'll know well, Oldham Park. Yes? Oldham Park School, Oldham Park Road. We say these words, we don't think what they might mean, the word park. So that was a great enclosed area with a paving fence, and they had hunting there, and they had a lodge. And usually an upper floor, and they'd go upstairs with large windows and view the hunt taking place, or just have the leisure of the outdoors. And later, after dissolution of the monasteries and everything, the lodge became Alton Park Farm, and that was there until the 1970s when that farm was demolished. So long-standing use as a lodge. The second part was Clachton Park, and it's actually in what today is Little Clacton, and adjacent to Holland River, our Holland Brook, as we've mentioned to you. Again, a large part, we'll see an image of it in a minute, that's a sketch. Right. So the Domesday states the mill was in Clachintuna. This included the present Great and Little Clacton. Holland River was tidal up to Rice Bridge at Fort Lusoken. It's a long length of water there going up. It's tidal. And there's always been tradition that ships went as far as Rice Bridge for trading. Now you might say, what about Fan Bridge and Holland Bridge on the road to Great Holland? Because it's before they were there. Fan Bridge on Great Holland Common was 17th century, and a century later the Holland Bridge going down the hill from the Little Holland Hall. So vessels could get up there as far as Rice Bridge. Right. So a good head of water could be achieved with a dam and a sluice across the river. And as the tide came in again, it backed up, the dam was there, the sluice was closed. And additionally, you got water draining into the river upstream. Remember that Holland Brook goes to within 1.5 miles of the River Stour. That part, Walton, Frinton, Kirby, very nearly was an island, only 1.5 miles short. And there's thousands of acres draining into Holland Brook. And there's other little upstreams as well. There's Wheely Brook, for example, and another one goes to Great Bentley Way. So it's all this water draining in, so you've got a good head of water, so as the tide went out, they could start milling. I came across this as well, supporting the argument. At Bradfield, the village of Bradfield, going towards Manbury Way, Bradfield Mill, a 1392 document stated, Le Dam de Bradfield Mill, the dam of Bradfield Mill, using that word dam to hold for water until they want to start the milling procedure. The 1840 Little Clacton tithe map and the apportionment is in two parts. You have a map of a parish, and then you what is called an apportionment, or sometimes it's called the award. It lists the field name, the owner, the occupier, what is used for, what is the area or acreage, and how much time to pay. So on this apportionment document, close to the river, there's names like Little Dans, Great Dans, Upper Dans, Further Dans, and now alongside Holland River or Holland Brook. Doesn't say much, just say, did Dan once mean Dan? Yes? I'm not seeing any nods from you. Right, so we got these 4 field names alongside Holland River. So, was it a corruption of the word downland? And a lane leading northwards from the railway bridge in Holland Road, away to carry and re-carry towards the dam. So Sladbury's Lane, you go up to Sladbury's Farm from Holland Road, yes, turn sharp left, you go up, and then you've got the road to Great Holland, Banbridge, and then you go a bit further, the road turns left, Cook's Green, there's the railway bridge there, and there's a big electric substation adjacent. Can you visualise that? So, this is where we're now looking to get an entrance to the downlands. So we've got 2 tracks approach the downlands, filmed down from Cook's Green, and they're on the tide map, and they are still there to this day. Now, I'm using Kenneth Walker here. I always respect his research he did years ago, and in his later years I used to go and visit him, and he was expound some ideas, but he didn't always put things in print if he wasn't 100% certain. Anyway, he did put this in print in the Little Clachintuna Village Guide. So this tract suggests that the embankment once spanned the brook at the lower end of the park in the Clacton Park we mentioned, thus protecting it before the seawall was built, so when the estuary was still there. It would indeed be a suitable place for a watermill, where corn might be taken by the villagers before the days of windmills. Again, alluding, as I said, that watermills, tide mills, came before a windmill. This is his sketch. Clacton Park, you can see on the left-hand side. And can you see the paling fence going all the way around? There's a fence and a bank and a ditch. Obviously to keep the game in, of course. And can you see the lodge, where I said that the bishop went on the upper floor to view the hunt in progress? And they'd have sustenance there. I probably didn't sleep there as such, but they'd spend the day there, they had sustenance for them. But at the top, can you see the Dan lands that we've been talking about? North is to the left to get your orientation if you want. Can we just highlight? So this is Sladbury's Lane, Cook's Green here. That's the road, Fanbridge, going on to Great Holland. Notice the tracks here. So here's the bend, railway line and the electric substation. These are the tracks here. And we'll see that just about coming to the end now. An aerial RF photograph, June 1963. Now north is to the top now. Let's see if we can identify ourselves. So here's Sladbury's Lane, down here is Sladbury's Farm, and coming through to Holland Road. Sladbury's, here's the road across to the Great Holland. There's Fanbridge, there's the river. These are the present floodplains. Was that once the original width of the river? I said about small vessels trading going up there, could well be. So here's our road coming up, we've got past Fanbridge, here's the bend, here's Cook's Green, here's the railway line from Clacton going to Fort Soken, yes. Here's the electrical substation now. Here's I'm interested, look, here's this track, bends, there's a spur there, and another track going up there. And here, that track was called Wood Lane, because at the top, it's arable now, there's a wood called the Wood, so hence Wood Lane. So here's again the river, here's the river bank, here's the spur, and even today it got bell mouth. Was that the traffic of wagons going in there to the mill across that river? Last slide, over to you. What are your thoughts? Where was that doomsday recorded mill? I've never seen anywhere in print which has addressed this question. Where was the mill? I haven't seen it anyway. So we had three possible suggestions. I believe that last one was where the mill of Clachintuna was. Thank you for listening to me this evening.
Well, thank you, Roger, for another interesting, fascinating talk there. Food for thought there.